Remember when Everybody Loves Raymond looked like the most ordinary sitcom on television? A sports writer, his wife, their kids, and his overbearing parents living right across the street. For 9 seasons, audiences laughed at Ray Barone getting squeezed between Marie's guilt trips and Deborah's exhaustion. And it all felt so simple, so relatable, so wholesome. But behind the cameras, the real story was a lot stranger than anything that ever made it to air. We are talking about a title nobody actually wanted, a brother who was genuinely furious about being turned into a punchline, a health scare the cast quietly worked around for years, and a Russian spin-off that somehow outlived the original by more than a decade. And trust us, you are not ready for what is waiting near the top of this list. So, hit that like button, subscribe if you have not already, and let us know in the comments which Barone family member you related to the most growing up. Now, let us get into the countdown with number 15. Number 15, a title nobody actually wanted. Everybody Loves Raymond sounds like a warm, confident title, the kind a network executive dreams up specifically to sell a cozy family sitcom. Except, it was never actually meant to be permanent. It started as a sarcastic jab from Ray Romano's real older brother, Richard, a New York City police officer who felt overshadowed by his comedian siblings' growing fame. Richard used to joke that he went to work and got shot at and spit on, while Raymond went to work and everybody loved him instead. Romano brought that offhand comment to his writing partner, Phil Rosenthal, and it became the working title almost as an inside joke, something they genuinely figured would eventually get swapped out for something more polished before the pilot ever aired. Romano has said he was legitimately nervous about it, worried critics would treat a title like that as an open invitation to tear the entire show apart before it even had a chance. His brother reportedly told him not to worry, insisting they would change it later. But then, CBS executives heard the title and fell in love with it immediately, calling it catchy, a little cheeky, and impossible to forget. So, the throwaway placeholder became permanent, and a private family joke turned into one of the most recognizable sitcom titles of the 1990s, printed on merchandise and syndication packages for decades to come. The overall premise grew out of Romano's own stand-up material too, much of which already mined married life for laughs from a husband's slightly bewildered point of view. Decades later, that impulsive nickname is still printed on DVD boxes, streaming menus, and reunion specials, proof that sometimes the joke everyone almost talked themselves out of ends up becoming the entire brand of a 9-season hit, printed on lunchboxes, streaming thumbnails, and reunion posters alike. Number 14, the brother behind the brother. Robert Barone, the tall, gloomy, endlessly jealous older sibling, played by Brad Garrett, was not pulled from thin air by the writing staff. He was assembled almost entirely from Ray Romano's real family, blending his 2 actual brothers, Richard and Robert, into a single fictional Barone character. The police career, the divorce, the constant sense of living in a more famous sibling's shadow, all of that came straight from Richard, the real cop whose sarcastic comment gave the show its title in the first place. The teaching background and slightly gentler temperament leaned more on Romano's younger brother, Robert, who spent years working as a second-grade school teacher. Richard reportedly was not thrilled about watching a slightly exaggerated version of his professional frustrations broadcast into millions of households every single week for 9 straight years. Producers wanted a shorter actor for the role, since Romano's real brother was not tall, and they liked the symbolism of an older brother being physically smaller than Raymond despite outranking him in age. Instead, they cast Brad Garrett, who stands 6'8", towering over Romano by more than half a foot. The height gap became one of the show's most reliable visual punchlines for its entire run, and years later, Romano and his real brothers even co-wrote a children's book together about the ups and downs of growing up as siblings. The real Richard eventually retired from the NYPD as a sergeant after 2 decades on the force, a career arc the writers borrowed loosely whenever Robert's own police storylines needed an extra dose of authenticity. Watching the show with that knowledge in mind changes how a lot of Robert's bitterness lands, since it was never pure fiction, it was somebody's actual brother's actual life, gently exaggerated for laughs. Number 13, the line was spoken only twice in the entire series. Considering the show is literally called Everybody Loves Raymond, you would expect that exact phrase to get repeated constantly, maybe as a running gag or a cheeky bit of self-aware humor woven through every season. It almost never happens. Across 210 episodes spanning 9 seasons, the specific words "Everybody Loves Raymond" are spoken aloud on screen only twice, and the first time happens right in the very first episode. Robert, staring bitterly at an award Ray had just received for his sports column, mutters the line in classic sarcastic Robert fashion, practically spelling out the entire emotional theme of the series in one exasperated sentence. The only other time it gets said comes later in season 1, in the episode "Fascinating Deborah," when Deborah herself repeats the line while playfully imitating Robert's jealous routine for the rest of the family. Outside of those 2 moments, the show never directly repeats its own title again, at least not word for word, for the remaining 8 seasons. Writers leaned instead on subtler jabs, sideways glances, and Robert's constant sighing resentment to keep the underlying joke alive without ever needing to say it outright again. It is a surprisingly restrained choice for a sitcom built around a phrase that practically begs to be repeated, and it means the entire emotional foundation of the series gets fully established in roughly 30 seconds of Season 1, Episode 1, then quietly retired for good, trusted to live on through subtext instead of dialogue for the rest of the show's run. It is a surprisingly disciplined choice for a network sitcom, especially one named after a phrase practically every marketing executive would have begged the writers to repeat constantly. Number 12, the twins who were not the original twins. When Everybody Loves Raymond premiered, Ray and Deborah's twin sons were introduced as adorable toddlers, and viewers had no idea that the boys on screen would not stay the same actors for very long. The original child performers cast for the pilot grew noticeably between filming and the show's actual premiere months later, which created an awkward continuity problem for a family sitcom, trying to track the passage of time realistically. So, producers made a swap, recasting the twin roles with real-life brothers Sawyer and Sullivan Sweeten. What makes the casting especially convenient is that their older sister, Madeline Sweeten, was already playing Ray and Deborah's daughter, Allie, meaning the show ended up with 3 genuine siblings, playing one television family's children for essentially the entire run. It gave the on-screen sibling dynamic an unusual authenticity, since the kids bickering and bonding on camera were doing the exact same thing off-camera as actual brothers and a sister. As the series continued, the twins grew from background toddlers into recurring characters with real storylines of their own, aging alongside the actors, playing them in a way few sitcoms ever managed to pull off convincingly. Few casual viewers realized just how literally the Barone kids were family, and it quietly shaped the entire feel of the household for years. The swap happened quickly enough that casual viewers barely registered the change from one season to the next, and by the show's later years, Sawyer and Sullivan were handling far more dialogue and full storylines than anyone would have expected from actors originally cast as background toddlers. By the time the finale aired, the twins were practically unrecognizable from the babies audiences first met. Number 11. A pregnancy nobody had to fake. During the season, one episode, Why Are We Here?, the show flashes back to the moment Ray and Deborah first moved in across the street from Frank and Marie, years before the twins were even born into the story. Behind the scenes, Patricia Heaton happened to be genuinely pregnant, while some of that flashback material was being filmed, which meant the production did not have to rely on baggy costumes or clever camera angles to sell the storyline convincingly. Instead of hiding it, the writers simply folded the real pregnancy into the fictional timeline, letting reality quietly line up with the plot they already needed to tell that season. It is a small, almost invisible bit of behind-the-scenes efficiency, but it says a lot about how the show operated day to day. Everybody Loves Raymond was famous for grounding its comedy in things that could plausibly happen to a real family. And there is something fitting about the fact that even a logistical accident, an actress's real-life pregnancy, ended up folded directly into the show's fictional history, instead of being carefully written around by the production team, saving everyone a headache during a very busy shooting schedule. It would not be the only time this happened either, since Heaton was pregnant more than once during the show's 9-season run, and the writers routinely had to quietly adjust wardrobe, camera blocking, and even entire storylines around her changing appearance without ever pulling viewers out of the Barone family's ordinary domestic chaos. For a series so committed to naturalism, it turned out real life was often the easiest script doctor the writer's room ever had access to, a strange kind of production luck most sitcoms never get to lean on quite this literally. Number 10. A marriage that outlasted the sitcom itself. Amy McDougal Barone, Robert's sweet and endlessly patient love interest, was played by actress Monica Horan. What most casual viewers never clocked is that Horan is married in real life to Phil Rosenthal, the man who created the entire series from that one sarcastic family comment. The two have been together since 1990, long before the show even existed, and they were already raising a young family together, while Rosenthal was busy building one of the most successful sitcoms of the entire decade. Horan's character did not even show up until partway through the show's run, but once Amy entered the picture, she became a steady, grounding presence for Robert after years of romantic disappointment and failed relationships with women who never quite fit into the Barone family orbit. Knowing that the show's creator was married to the actress playing his on-screen sister-in-law adds a strange little layer of behind-the-scenes symmetry, almost like the real Barone family had a genuine family quietly embedded inside it the whole time. It also meant Rosenthal had a uniquely personal stake in how Amy's storyline developed over the years, since he was essentially writing scenes for his own real wife to perform opposite one of the show's most beloved characters. Rosenthal and Horan were also raising 2 children of their own for much of the show's run, meaning the man building an entire fictional universe around messy in-law relationships was quietly navigating a real one at home the whole time. It is the kind of behind-the-scenes detail that only becomes obvious once you already know to look for it, hiding in plain sight through nearly 200 episodes of family bickering. Okay, we have to take a quick pause because if you are enjoying these behind-the-scenes stories, do us a favor. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let us know in the comments which reveal has surprised you the most so far, because honestly, the pilot's audio problems alone caught us off guard. All right, let us get back to the countdown with number 9. Number 9, Frank's greatest hits were somebody else's roles first. Peter Boyle brought decades of serious, acclaimed film work to the role of Frank Barone, and the writers occasionally leaned directly into his older career, instead of pretending it had never happened. In the Season 2, Episode 6 Feet Under, Frank delivers a speech to Ray about not sweating the small stuff in life, and it is almost word for word the same philosophy Boyle's character delivered as a cab driver and taxi driver decades earlier, quietly counseling a much angrier young man in that classic film. Later, during a Halloween episode, Frank dresses up as Frankenstein's monster, a clear wink toward Boyle's memorable earlier role in Young Frankenstein. These references were not accidents. The writers knew exactly who they had cast in the role, and they built small tributes into ordinary sitcom scenes as a reward for longtime film fans paying especially close attention to the details buried inside otherwise unremarkable domestic squabbles. It gave Frank, a character who mostly existed to complain about food and insult his adult sons, an unexpected extra dimension, since underneath the gruff sitcom, Dad was a genuinely respected actor whose earlier, much darker performances were quietly winking at the audience the entire time without ever needing an explanation. Across multiple Halloween episodes, Frank's costumes kept circling back to Boyle's own film history, turning a throwaway holiday gag into an ongoing, mostly uncredited tribute to one of the cast's most accomplished careers. Most viewers laughed along without ever clocking the reference, which is exactly the kind of layered writing that made repeat viewings of the series feel rewarding decades later. Decades earlier, Boyle broke through playing an angry working-class bigot in the 1970 drama Joe, about as far from lovable Grandpa Frank as a role could get. Number 8. A real health scare hiding behind the jokes. Peter Boyle's gravelly voice and grumpy energy made Frank Barone feel practically indestructible. But the actor playing him was dealing with serious health problems for years, while the cameras kept rolling every week. Boyle had already survived a major stroke and battled heart disease before Raymond even began filming, experiences that reportedly left him more reflective and grateful, even as he kept working at a genuinely demanding sitcom pace for 9 consecutive seasons. During the show's run, he experienced additional chest pain and health complications that forced him to quietel. "I pushed through discomfort most viewers at home never noticed on screen. That scare happened during rehearsals in March of 1999 when paramedics were rushed straight to the set." He continued performing Frank's larger-than-life bluster right up until the show wrapped in 2005, never letting the audience see how much effort it actually took behind the scenes to deliver those performances week after week. Boyle passed away in December of 2006, just 1 year after the series ended, from complications related to multiple myeloma and heart disease. Castmates were remarkably open afterward about how much they admired his quiet resilience, with Doris Roberts later saying that losing him felt like losing a spouse, a strikingly personal comment considering the two had spent nearly a decade playing a bickering television marriage together on screen for millions of viewers. His earlier stroke reportedly happened years before Raymond even started, and those close to him said the experience left him noticeably more patient and grateful on set, even during the show's most grueling stretches of production, according to people who worked alongside him week after week. Number 7. The pay gap that broke the cast wide open. By the show's later seasons, Everybody Loves Raymond was one of the most valuable sitcoms in America, but that enormous value was not being shared evenly among the cast at all. Ray Romano was reportedly earning around $1.8 million per episode, a staggering figure that reflected his central role as both star and namesake of the entire series. Meanwhile, his co-stars, including Garrett, Patricia Heaton, Doris Roberts, and Peter Boyle, were making roughly $160,000 per episode each, a small fraction of Romano's paycheck, despite carrying just as much of the show's comedic weight week after week for the exact same audience. In 2003, tensions finally boiled over, and Garrett staged an actual work walkout, refusing to show up on set until the massive pay disparity was seriously addressed by the studio. It was a rare moment of real-world Hollywood drama, bleeding directly into the production of a show built entirely around cozy, relatable family conflict, rather than backstage tension. The standoff eventually got resolved behind closed doors, and the cast continued filming, but it exposed a very unglamorous truth, hiding behind the warm, nostalgic sitcom everyone loved watching every Monday night. Later contract negotiations reportedly narrowed that gap somewhat for the show's final seasons, though exact figures were kept private, a level of transparency about sitcom pay that was genuinely rare for network television at the time. It is a reminder that even a show built entirely around gentle, low-stakes family bickering was quietly shaped, at least for one tense stretch, by the exact same kind of hardball salary standoff you would expect from a much flashier prestige drama. Number 6. The pilot almost sounded broken. Long before critics were calling Everybody Loves Raymond one of the smartest sitcoms on television, its very first episode had a much rougher problem, and one that had nothing to do with jokes or acting at all. The pilot, produced through HBO Independent Productions, ended up with noticeably glitchy audio, the kind of technical hiccup that could easily have doomed a fledgling series before it ever found its footing with audiences. Sound issues in a single-camera sitcom pilot are far from unusual, but for a show that would eventually become known for its crisp, naturalistic dialogue and perfectly timed comedic pauses, it is a strange footnote to its origin story. Despite the rough technical start, the pilot still managed to establish nearly every running gag the series would lean on for the next 9 years, including Marie sniffing around Deborah's refrigerator and reacting to something questionable, and Frank jokingly sniffing the twins' heads while announcing he had found the fountain of youth. In other words, the show's comedic DNA was already fully formed from minute one, even while the actual soundtrack needed some serious behind-the-scenes cleanup before anyone even noticed how good the underlying writing already was going to be for years to come. The production also reused a soundstage set originally built for All in the Family, a very different kind of difficult household. CBS reportedly saw enough promise in the writing to commit to a full season almost immediately, essentially betting the show's future on its characters rather than waiting for the technical side to catch up. It turned out to be the right call since audio problems fade from memory quickly, but a genuinely funny pilot episode is exactly the kind of thing that keeps a fragile new sitcom alive long enough to find its footing with a real audience. Number 5. an on-screen family with real screaming matches. Everybody Loves Raymond built its entire identity around believable, lived-in family conflict, and according to people involved with the production, some of that tension was not entirely manufactured for television. The show's writers, led by creator Phil Rosenthal, followed one strict rule guiding every single storyline. A simple question they asked about every scene before filming it. Could this actually happen in a real family? That commitment to naturalism meant writers frequently mined their own personal lives, real arguments, and awkward family dynamics for material, blurring the line between fiction and autobiography more than most sitcoms of that era would ever admit publicly. Romano has openly discussed how uncomfortably close some episodes hit to real conversations with his own parents and brothers, to the point where family members occasionally recognized specific arguments almost word for word once episodes actually aired on CBS. Doris Roberts even said she built Marie by blending Romano's real Italian mother with creator Phil Rosenthal's own German Jewish mother into one meddling, endlessly loving composite. That level of honesty is exactly what made the show resonate so widely with audiences, since viewers were laughing at something disturbingly close to their own kitchen tables. It was not only Romano's family feeding the writer's room either, since staff writers regularly pitched their own embarrassing relatives and awkward holiday dinners, turning the entire show into a kind of collective confessional disguised as a network sitcom. It might explain why so many different households swore the show was somehow based specifically on their own family, even though it was really stitched together from dozens of families all at once. Number 4, Raymond conquered Russia and simply never left. Everybody Loves Raymond has been adapted for foreign audiences in countries including the Czech Republic, the Netherlands, India, Egypt, and Israel, but none of those localized versions came close to matching what eventually happened in Russia. The Russian adaptation, called Voroniny, premiered in 2009 and eventually became the single longest-running local adaptation of a foreign television series anywhere in the world, a record officially recognized by Guinness World Records. The show ran for more than 20 seasons and produced over 500 episodes, blowing past the original American version's already impressive 9-season run by a staggering margin most producers never dared to dream about. One of its lead actors reportedly gained around 20 kilograms, specifically to physically transform into his version of the Frank Barone equivalent for Russian television. Creator Phil Rosenthal even documented his surreal experience helping launch the Russian version in a documentary called Exporting Raymond, capturing the culture clash between his naturalistic comedy philosophy and Russian producers who kept insisting the material needed broader, more exaggerated jokes to actually work for local audiences. Somehow the format survived the translation completely intact, and Voroniny went on to become one of Russia's most beloved sitcoms for an entire generation of viewers, proving family bickering translates beautifully no matter the language spoken. Beyond Russia, the original American format has aired in subtitled or dubbed versions in well over 140 countries worldwide, an almost absurd level of international reach for a show built around two families squabbling on a single quiet Long Island street. Number 3, syndication turned it into a genuine money machine. Everybody Loves Raymond wrapped its network run on CBS in 2005, but its financial life was really just getting started at that exact point. The show became a syndication juggernaut almost immediately, airing in reruns across cable networks for years afterward and generating enormous ongoing revenue long after the cast had stopped filming any new episodes together. Reports have suggested Ray Romano continued earning substantial income from the show more than 15 years after it originally ended, a testament to just how deeply generous syndication deals can reward the stars of a genuinely popular sitcom that keeps finding new audiences. The series also aired in subtitled or dubbed form in well over 100 countries around the world, an astonishing reach for a show built around such a specific, hyper-local premise. 2 Italian-American families living directly across the street from each other on Long Island. That universal appeal, paired with syndication income that kept quietly compounding for years, transformed Everybody Loves Raymond from a successful 9-season sitcom into something closer to a permanent fixture of American television, still airing in reruns on multiple channels even decades after Ray Barone's very last on-screen appearance ever aired. Today, the entire 9-season catalog is easy to find on multiple streaming platforms too, quietly introducing the Barone family to viewers who were not even born when the finale originally aired on CBS, Sony Pictures. Television has managed the international distribution rights for decades now, a big reason the show still finds new audiences overseas. For a sitcom that never leaned on shocking cliffhangers or expensive guest stars to stay relevant, that kind of staying power says everything about how well the writing has actually held up. Okay, quick pause again before we hit the very top of the list, because these last two facts are genuinely some of the wildest details from the entire series. If you have not subscribed yet, now is a great time, and drop a comment telling us which Barone parent you personally think was worse, Frank or Marie, because honestly, the comments are always split right down the middle. Let us finish this countdown with number 2. Number 2, the awards kept piling up, while nobody really expected them to. When Everybody Loves Raymond premiered in 1996, it did not exactly explode out of the gate the way network executives had hoped it would. Early ratings were fairly modest, and the show spent its first couple of seasons quietly building an audience rather than dominating entertainment headlines or awards conversations. That slow burn eventually paid off in a truly massive way. By the time the series wrapped for good, it had collected an astonishing 15 Primetime Emmy Awards, including 2 separate wins for Outstanding Comedy Series and a personal win for Ray Romano as Outstanding Lead Actor in a Comedy Series. Doris Roberts alone claimed 4 Emmys for playing Marie, while Peter Boyle picked up 7 nominations for playing the cranky, unforgettable Frank Barone, though his only major recognition for the role technically came through a shared Screen Actors Guild Award alongside the rest of the ensemble cast. Patricia Heaton also won 2 Emmys of her own for Outstanding Lead Actress in a Comedy Series. What makes this especially remarkable is how unglamorous the show's central premise actually was: a family bickering over pot roast and parking spaces, dressed up in absolutely nothing flashy. There were no elaborate sets or celebrity guest stunts, just sharp writing and naturalistic performances, and somehow that quiet formula made Everybody Loves Raymond one of the most decorated sitcoms of its entire era. The show also picked up 6 nominations for Outstanding Comedy Series across its run, a remarkable run of consistency for a series that started out as such a modest, low-key ratings performer. It is proof that a show does not need explosive premiere ratings to eventually be remembered as one of its era's most respected comedies. Number 1, the loneliest number of them all. Everybody Loves Raymond ended its 9-season run in 2005 while still sitting comfortably in the Nielsen Top 10, a rare and genuinely enviable position for any long-running sitcom to occupy on its way out the door. The series finale drew a massive audience, and reports at the time noted it pulled in well over 30 million viewers, an almost unthinkable number by today's fractured streaming era television standards. Rather than fading out quietly over a slow decline, the show chose to leave at the absolute height of its popularity, a decision that only strengthened its reputation in the years that followed its finale. Vox has since called it one of the most psychologically astute sitcoms ever produced, praising how deeply it understood the messy, contradictory, genuinely complicated nature of real family love, hiding underneath all the bickering. The bittersweet twist woven into that legacy is that several key cast members did not live to see just how enduring their work would eventually become for entirely new generations of viewers. Peter Boyle passed in 2006, and Doris Roberts followed a full decade later in 2016 at the age of 90, meaning half of the original Barone family never got to fully watch the syndication institution their sitcom eventually turned into. The surviving cast finally reunited on camera decades later for a CBS anniversary special, a bittersweet celebration that could not help but underline just how much time and how many familiar faces the Barone family had lost along the way. Even so, the show's core promise held up exactly as its writers intended, a genuinely believable family that audiences kept coming back to, long after the cameras had officially stopped rolling for good. And there you have it, 15 wild and surprising facts about Everybody Loves Raymond that most casual fans never knew about at all. From a title nobody wanted to, a Russian spin-off that quietly outlived the original, this sweet, unglamorous little family sitcom, turned out to have one of the strangest, most surprising behind-the-scenes stories in television history, full of pay disputes, hidden health battles, and family secrets hiding in plain sight the entire time. It is a reminder that even the most ordinary-looking family sitcom on television can hide a genuinely extraordinary story once you actually go looking for it, buried behind 9 seasons of pot roast, parking spaces, and endless bickering across the street. Which one shocked you the most? And which ones do you think we somehow missed entirely? Drop it in the comments below, right now, because we truly always love hearing directly from you and reading every single reply. And if you want more deep dives into the stars, shows, and stories you grew up watching every week, make sure to subscribe right now and stick around for what is coming next. We have got plenty more nostalgic deep dives just like this one coming very soon. So stick around for the next one.